Welcome to Chapter 01 of the Prodbach Introduction. Hello and welcome back to another deep dive. Really glad to be here, ready to get into some foundational stuff today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to digging into this first chapter.
Yeah, so today we are jumping right into the very beginning, Chapter 1 of the Guide to the Product Management and Marketing Body of Knowledge, or, well, the ProdBOK, as they call it.
Right, the ProdBO.
Yeah.
And this chapter, it really just sets the scene, doesn't it? Explains the motivation behind the whole guide.
It does. It gets right to what seems to be a pretty central challenge in the field.
Exactly. The source material points it out immediately. Product management has grown, massively,
Yeah.
but there's no single agreed-upon standard body of knowledge or even a standard skill set.
Right. It paints this picture of it being learned mostly on the job. Kind of trial by fire, maybe.
That's the phrase they use. And because of that, people move between companies with their own unique take on product management, which, well, isn't always consistent.
And that inconsistency, it has real-world effects, doesn't it? Like for hiring managers.
Oh, definitely. Makes it super hard to know if someone's skills are actually transferable. So managers often fall back on looking for deep domain experience, almost as a proxy, because they aren't sure how else to gauge those core PM abilities.
Yeah. Without that common baseline, it feels, well, maybe a bit improvised sometimes, open to interpretation.
That's a good way to put it. Interpretation and improvisation.
So that's the problem this first chapter really tackles. Our mission for this deep dive, then, is to understand why they felt the need to create the ProdBOK. What is it exactly? And what about this product management framework, the PMF?
Right. And who is it for? And how does it all connect to things like professional certification?
Okay, let's unpack this. So diving a bit deeper into that core problem. The source says the community grew hugely, right? From just a few key thinkers to this massive global thing.
Exploded.
But that growth didn't automatically lead to a standard set of knowledge or skills being nailed down.
Yeah, it gives that Procter & Gamble example, which is interesting, how brand management there was, really clearly defined decades ago even.
Compared to a lot of companies now who are still kind of figuring out what product management even means, and they just hire for experience.
And that experience piece is key, isn't it? Because there isn't always that standard university track or that one required certification. So people really do build their understanding through doing the job.
That trial by fire again.
Yeah, moving around, different companies, different challenges. Each experience shapes how you see the role, but maybe leaves gaps compared to someone else's path.
And that leads right back to the hiring issue we mentioned. Managers can't easily assess the product management skills, so they look for the domain knowledge instead.
Exactly. It kind of perpetuates that variability, that Wild West feeling you hinted at.
Precisely. And this is where the ProdBK comes in, trying to fill that gap.
Yeah.
The source defines a body of knowledge, a BOK, pretty clearly.
What's the definition they give?
It's a commonly accepted standard. Concepts, definitions, processes, activities, all agreed upon by thought leaders, academics, practitioners.
Okay, so a consensus view.
Right. And importantly, they stress it's not an encyclopedia, not meant to be exhaustive.
Ah, okay. So more like a guide.
Exactly. A guide to spark further learning, point you to other resources, maybe lead towards certification.
And the ProdBOK itself, then, is defined as?
Simply the sum of knowledge within the product management profession.
Got it. So it aims to capture the stuff that applies to most product managers most of the time, the consensus view of what's valuable.
Yes, that's the idea. It provides the fundamental knowledge, not the absolute final word, but the base camp maybe, to encourage deeper exploration.
What's fascinating here, I think, is that they call it a living reference.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that significant?
Well, product management isn't static, is it? Tech changes, markets shift, our understanding evolves. Calling it living acknowledges that the guide itself needs to adapt and change over time. It's not carved in stone.
That makes a lot of sense for such a dynamic field.
Yeah.
Okay, so alongside the ProdBOK, the BOK itself, there's this standardized product management framework, the PMF.
Right, the PMF. This is really about creating a consistent language, a structure that covers the whole product journey.
From idea to retirement.
Exactly. Innovation, creation, delivery, ongoing management. And it's meant to apply to any product, whether it's brand new or mature.
And the goal, what's it trying to achieve?
The stated goal is pretty bold.
Right.
Define the activities a PM needs to perform to get a product out the door successfully.
And success means?
Meeting customer and business needs, hitting expectations, the usual constraints. Budget, schedule, scope, quality resources.
Okay, and how does it work? Does it give you, like, steps to follow?
It organizes things into stages, helps manage those messy cross-functional activities. It talks about integrating design controls, being scalable so it works for small things and big complex systems, and being maintainable.
And it applies to physical goods, software, services.
All of it, the full range, which is important today, right? So many products are complex mixes.
Definitely. And with globalization, changing regulations, things are complex. So a framework helps get that holistic system-level view.
That's the idea. It helps you see the whole picture.
Okay. Now here's where it gets really interesting. You mentioned steps, but the source says the PMF is not a standard operating procedure.
Correct. Crucially, it's not prescriptive.
Meaning
It doesn't demand you complete every single item on some checklist for every single project. It's not rigid like that. So.
it's not just telling you what to do.
Exactly. That's the key insight. It's not a script. Instead, its purpose is to promote critical thinking.
Ah, okay. How does it do that?
It lays out the range of activities that might be needed for any product initiative. Then it expects you, the team, to think critically about your specific situation, your product, your market, your constraints, and decide which of those activities actually makes sense to perform.
So it gives you the map, the potential routes, but you choose the actual path.
Precisely. That critical thinking is what enables agility. You understand the possibilities the framework offers, then adapt intelligently.
That feels much more aligned with how product management actually works in practice, that need for adaptability. Okay, so we have this BOK, this non-prescriptive PMF. Who are they aiming this guide at? Who's the audience?
Well, the source gives a pretty extensive list. It really emphasizes that it's meant as a single reference point for almost anyone involved or interested in product management.
For the top down.
Yeah, from senior execs setting expectations for their teams all the way to people just learning the ropes.
Let's run through that list they provide, because it shows the breadth.
Okay.
Senior executives,
Managers of product management professionals,
brand managers, product owners,
product marketing managers, portfolio managers, program managers, project managers,
business analysts,
educators and trainers, people developing curriculum or teaching this stuff,
and consultants and other specialists in the field. Wow.
Yeah, it's a wide net, clearly intended as a common ground reference for many different roles that touch product.
It really is. Okay, so one big reason for creating a standard like this you mentioned earlier is paving the way for professional development, right? Like certification.
Exactly. A BOK provides that standard foundation. A common language, common concepts, definitions.
Makes it easier to discuss, write about, apply the profession's principles consistently.
Precisely. And that standardization of understanding and skills helps both individuals in their careers and organizations succeed.
And getting certified based on that BOK. What does that signal?
It demonstrates, well, both qualitatively and quantitatively, that you have the ability to perform according to that recognized standard. It also shows dedication, right? A commitment to learning and advancing in the field.
And the source links this Prod BOK directly to a specific certification.
Yes, it explicitly states the Prod BO is the basis for the exam questions for the AIPMM certification. That's the Association of International Product Marketing and Management.
AIPMM.
And it notes that AIPMM follows the ISO IEC 100A24 standard in creating their certification process, which suggests, a certain level of rigor.
Right. International standards for certification bodies.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, having this standard knowledge base linked to credible certification really helps elevate the profession.
Moves it beyond just art or trial by fire.
Towards being seen as a recognized professional discipline with actual benchmarks for what it means to be competent.
That makes sense. A clearer path for people entering and growing in the field.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, this chapter gives a quick overview of how the rest of the Prod BO guide is structured.
Yeah, just a brief roadmap. It breaks it into 3 main sections.
Section 1 is
understanding product management. So the foundations, key terms, concepts, processes, the context it operates in, how it connects to other parts of the business. The basics.
Got it. Then section 2.
That's where they dive into the product management lifestyle framework itself, the PMF we've been talking about.
And it introduces the 7 phases.
Yep. Conceive, plan, develop, qualify, launch, deliver, and retire. The whole life cycle.
Okay. And section 3.
That gets more practical. Key product management tools by product lifecycle phase. So specific tools and techniques you might use within each of those 7 phases.
Right, so it gets progressively more detailed. This first chapter is really the setup then, explaining the why, defining the core what, the BOK, the framework identifying the who, and outlining the purpose, including that certification link.
Exactly. It's the essential context you need before you get into the nitty-gritty of the framework stages and all the tools later on.
So thinking about all this, maybe for you, our listener, it's worth pausing for a second. Does this description of the field, maybe that lack of standardization, the trial by fire learning, does that resonate with your experience?
Yeah, whether you're a PM now or you hire them or work with them, have you seen this play out?
And can you see how having a common language or this kind of non-prescriptive but structured framework, the PMF, could actually help? Could it bring more clarity, maybe better results? Why is this relevant to you in your work?
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit just in this first chapter. We looked at why the Prod Buc was created, tackling that lack of standardization in a growing field.
We defined what a body of knowledge is, what the Prod BK represents, and importantly, what the product management framework is and isn't. That focus on critical thinking, not rigid rules.
Right. We saw who the guide is aimed at, that very broad audience, and we touched on its role in standardizing the profession and supporting certification, like through AIPMM.
And like you said, it really sets the stage perfectly for the deeper dives into the framework and tools that come in the later chapters.
So what does this all mean?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The source positions the Prod BO as a living reference, something that evolves. And the PMF, its core framework, is designed specifically to promote critical thinking, not just blind adherence.
So the thought maybe to leave you with is this. How does a standard intended to bring consistency and professional recognition actually balance that goal when it described itself as living, meaning changeable, and when its central framework relies on critical thinking, meaning adaptation and context-specific decisions? How do you square that need for a standard with the inherent need for flexibility and evolution in a field like product management that changes so incredibly fast?
That's a great tension to think about, how to be standard and adaptable simultaneously. Okay, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Chapter 1 of the Prod Buc.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you on the next one.